Are you an INFJ who feels emotionally exhausted at work? You're not alone, and your greatest strength might also be your biggest risk.
For INFJs, emotional intelligence is a double-edged sword. Their empathic superpower can also become a dangerous weakness, leading to burnout, manipulation, and deep empathy fatigue. These rare individuals, making up less than 2% of people, are renowned for their high EQ and uncanny ability to read others' emotions and intentions, which often draws them into roles as supportive leaders and trusted advisors. Their intuitive empathy enables INFJs to read people like books, frequently knowing what someone feels before that person is even aware of it. This gives INFJs tremendous power to connect and lead with compassion. However, the same emotional attunement that is their secret strength can become their Achilles heel.
It thrives when you dwell on what went wrong. It convinces you that you are powerless. This is where the trap of victimhood begins. One of the most subtle and dangerous ways the ego keeps you weak is through the identity of the victim. When you fall into victimhood, you start believing that everything bad that happens to you is because of others. Bad luck, cruel fate. And while it might feel like you're protecting yourself by blaming the outside world, what you're actually doing is surrendering your personal power. Because if you believe you have no control over your life, you will never take the steps necessary to change it. And that's exactly what the ego wants.
INFJs may absorb the pain of others like a sponge, blurring the line between others' feelings and their own until they're overwhelmed. In extreme cases, such deep empathy can be misused or weaponized, either by others taking advantage of the INFJ's kindness or by an unhealthy INFJ themselves using emotional insight to manipulate the so-called dark empath phenomenon. In the workplace, this duality plays out in striking ways. Below, we explore the INFJ's secret workplace superpowers, the hidden struggles behind their strengths, and how they use and sometimes misuse emotional intelligence in leadership roles. INFJ superpowers in the workplace. INFJs thrive in roles that allow them to focus deeply on meaningful projects. Their blend of intuition and empathy helps them find creative solutions and build strong team rapport. Despite their rarity, INFJs often punch above their weight at work thanks to several distinctive strengths. These superpowers spring from their introverted intuition, NI, and extroverted feeling, FE, cognitive functions, which combine visionary insight with interpersonal sensitivity. Here are some of the key INFJ superpowers in professional settings. Unwavering loyalty and empathy. INFJs are people-oriented and genuinely care about their team. They strive to build a family-like atmosphere at work and will rarely sacrifice an employee's well-being for short-term gain. Colleagues feel supported under an INFJ leader who gives credit where it's due and makes sure everyone feels valued. This authentic empathy isn't just touchy-feely. Research shows that empathetic leadership correlates with higher innovation, engagement, and staff retention, an area where INFJs excel. Creative problem solving and vision. As dominant intuitives, INFJs can think outside the box and anticipate issues long before others notice them. Their knee gives them a sixth sense for patterns and possibilities, allowing INFJs to identify bottlenecks or hidden inefficiencies and brainstorm innovative solutions that work for everyone. They often infuse a strong sense of purpose into projects as well. INFJs are guided by core principles and seek meaning in their work, so they naturally craft clear mission statements and inspire others with a vision of positive impact. An INFJ manager will clarify roles, set detailed timelines, and ensure everyone knows exactly what needs to be done and why. Their perfectionist tendencies mean they hate to let details slip through the cracks, so under INFJ guidance projects are usually well organized and nothing is left to chaos. This ties back to their desire for integrity. If something is worth doing, it's worth doing right. Lead by coaching and encouragement. INFJs prefer to mentor rather than boss. You'll rarely hear an INFJ boss bark, "my way" or "the highway." Instead, they use positive reinforcement and individual coaching to bring out the best in each team member. They take a sincere interest in colleagues' personal growth, often helping people develop new skills and confidence on the job. This low-key, supportive style motivates teams because employees feel their INFJ leader truly has their back and wants them to succeed for their own sake, not just for the company. Determination coupled with integrity. When an INFJ commits to a cause or project that aligns with their values, they display remarkable determination. They aren't in it for ego or glory, but if the stakes are high and the mission matters, an INFJ will work tirelessly to see it through. Their strong ideals make them resilient. Setbacks or ethical dilemmas only strengthen their resolve to do what's right. INFJs do have perfectionistic streaks that can make them demanding, especially of themselves, but they temper this with patience and a willingness to get in the trenches to support the team. The result is a leader who leads by example, holding everyone, including themselves, to high standards, while never asking others to do what they wouldn't do as well. These superpowers explain why, when INFJs do step into leadership, they can shine. In fact, even though most INFJs don't actively seek out authority, often doubting they're cut out to be the boss, those who embrace their strengths often become the beloved servant leaders of their organizations, the kind of bosses who earn loyalty through genuine care, creativity, and integrity. Hidden struggles of the INFJ at work. Of course, every superpower has a flip side. The very qualities that make INFJs so valuable in the workplace also create unique challenges. Many of an INFJ's struggles stay hidden beneath their calm, competent exterior. Here are some of the most common challenges INFJs face on the job. Empathy overload and burnout. INFJ's empathy is a double-edged sword. They don't just observe colleagues' emotions, they absorb them. An INFJ can hardly help putting themselves in others' shoes, but doing this often to the point of exhaustion means they risk empathy. They may end a day of intense team support feeling utterly drained and unable to distinguish their own emotions from the stress they've picked up from everyone else. One INFJ described it as an internal emotional traffic jam, so many feelings crowding in that they become overwhelmed. Over time, this can lead to chronic fatigue, anxiety, or a numb cynicism known as compassion fatigue. In short, caring too much can crash an INFJ's system if they don't learn to set limits. People-pleasing and boundary issues. Highly conscientious and conflict-averse, INFJs struggle to say no. They worry about upsetting others or disrupting workplace harmony. As a result, INFJs often overextend themselves, agreeing to extra tasks, staying late to help a colleague, taking on duties outside their role, even when they're already overloaded. Unprincipled coworkers may notice this weakness and pile unreasonable demands onto the helpful INFJ. In fact, people who crave advantage can manipulate INFJ's generosity, knowing the INFJ finds it hard to refuse. This dynamic can leave INFJs doing everyone else's work or covering for slackers at great cost to their own energy. It also breeds quiet resentment in the INFJ, who may feel others exploit their kindness. Being taken advantage of. Along with trouble saying no, INFJs have a trusting, idealistic nature. They want to believe the best about people. Unfortunately, this optimism can make them susceptible to manipulation and exploitation by less scrupulous characters. An INFJ employee might initially give a difficult boss or coworker the benefit of the doubt, only to realize, too late, that the person has been using them. For example, an INFJ might repeatedly cover a teammate's duties out of sympathy until they recognize that teammate has been slacking deliberately. As one analysis puts it, the INFJ's very empathy and compassion can blind them to the fact that they are being taken advantage of. The lesson here is painful. Not everyone is as genuine or caring as the INFJ, and failing to discern that can lead to being duped or overburdened. Conflict avoidance. Most INFJs hate workplace conflict. They value peace and cooperation, sometimes to a fault. An INFJ manager might avoid firing an underperforming employee because it feels too cruel, or they might tolerate disrespect from a client rather than make a scene. This avoidance stems from their desire to maintain harmony, but it can backfire. By sidestepping confrontation, INFJs may inadvertently enable toxic behavior or allow problems to fester. They might grin and bear inappropriate demands or swallow their own needs to keep others happy. Over time, biting their tongue can erode an INFJ's morale and lead to passive-aggressive behavior or the famous INFJ door slam, cutting off someone completely after long brewing frustration.
But here's the brutal truth. The ego doesn't want you to heal. Because if you healed, if you truly let go of your suffering, the ego would lose its identity. It would no longer have anything to feed on. And as long as you're waiting, you're not moving, you're not evolving, you're stuck. You see, the ego itself keeps scratching at them until they bleed again. But here comes the harshest truth of all. No one is coming to save you. No one is going to rescue you. The only person who can break this cycle is you. So how do you dismantle the ego and regain control over your life? You start to awaken. There are 3 powerful ways to begin breaking the ego's grip on you. 1. Observe the voice in your head. When the ego starts reminding you of your wounds, when it tells you life is unfair, pause. Don't react. Just watch the voice like an observer. Realize that this voice is not you. It's just a mental program, a pattern, a recording that plays over and over. Second, stop feeding the story of suffering. Every time you replay the story of how you were wronged, every time you talk about your pain to anyone who will listen, you reinforce that wound. You give it more power. Ask yourself, does this story empower me or does it weaken me? If it weakens you, let it go.
Conflict avoidance, in essence, can undermine an INFJ's boundaries until they hit a breaking point. Perfectionism and idealism. Woes, INFJs carry an inner vision of how things should be. They yearn for the ideal. In the workplace, this translates to high standards and sometimes unrealistic expectations. When reality inevitably falls short of their ideal, INFJs can be deeply disappointed or blame themselves. Psychologists note that INFJs have incredibly high standards for emotional harmony and can struggle to reconcile the messy, real world with their idealized vision. They might over-criticize their own work for not being perfect or feel disillusioned when a team or cause doesn't live up to their lofty values. This emotional perfectionism can lead to stress, self-doubt, and cycles of burnout, as the INFJ works ever harder to attain an impossible standard. As one source notes, their strong idealism often creates inner conflicts when faced with the imperfections. And the challenge for INFJs is learning to appreciate progress over perfection and not holding themselves or others to unsustainable ideals. Overthinking and self-doubt. Behind the INFJ's composed exterior often lives a swirl of overanalysis. INFJs can slip into a Nitai loop, endlessly reflecting and rehashing decisions or interactions in their mind. If something goes wrong, they will agonize over what happened and what they should have done differently. This obsessive overthinking amplifies negative emotions and makes it harder for them to move on. Moreover, INFJs have a notorious inner critic. Even healthy INFJs tend to second-guess themselves, but under stress, this can spiral into paralyzing self-doubt. At work, that might manifest as the team lead who re-edits an email 10 times, or the employee who never speaks up in meetings because they're internally questioning if their ideas are good enough. In extreme cases, an INFJ might even refuse a promotion or leadership opportunity because they've convinced themselves they're not ready or worthy, despite being highly capable. This internal struggle with confidence means INFJs often have to be actively encouraged to step into the spotlight. They won't naturally tout their own strengths. These hidden struggles illustrate why INFJs can sometimes appear mysterious or enigmatic to their coworkers. On one hand, an INFJ may be the empathetic superstar holding the team together. On the other, they might suddenly withdraw or burn out in ways others don't understand. It's the yin-yang of the INFJ psyche, tremendous compassion and competence, balanced by periods of overwhelm and self-doubt. Recognizing these challenges is crucial, not to paint INFJs as fragile, but to appreciate that even the office counselor superhero needs support, boundaries, and understanding to thrive.
From replaying the memories on an endless loop, from believing that it should have turned out differently, it's not the loss that's destroying you. It's your refusal to let go of what already is. Imagine someone who's just been fired. If they hold on to anger, blame, and the belief that it was unjust, they can remain stuck in that pain for years. If you experienced rejection, humiliation, or neglect when you were young, then today you might avoid opportunities, relationships, or dreams, because a part of you is terrified that the same pain will return. As long as you don't become aware of these patterns, you will repeat them for the rest of your life, and you'll call it destiny.
How INFJs use EQ to lead. INFJs often become natural leaders when they allow themselves to step up, precisely because of their high emotional intelligence. In leadership roles, they leverage their empathy and insight to foster a positive, mission-driven team culture. Emotional intelligence, EQ, is the cornerstone of the INFJ leadership style. For example, an INFJ manager will keenly read the emotional landscape of a room with precision, sensing unspoken tensions or morale issues that others miss. By tuning into these undercurrents, they can address problems before they escalate, perhaps pulling a struggling employee aside for a compassionate check-in or mediating a quiet conflict between coworkers. This proactive empathy builds trust. Team members feel seen and supported by an INFJ leader who truly gets how they feel. Importantly, INFJs pair empathy with action. Their intuition, NI, doesn't just absorb feelings, it also draws connections to the bigger picture. An INFJ leader can empathize with an employee's personal crisis and reassign deadlines or resources to help, balancing individual needs with project goals. They excel at adaptive communication, adjusting their approach to each person's personality and motivations. One subordinate might need gentle encouragement, while another appreciates frank, constructive feedback. INFJs intuitively deliver the right message in the right tone. This personalized touch makes employees feel valued as individuals, which boosts morale and loyalty. It's no surprise that under INFJ leadership, workplaces often feel like a family and enjoy high levels of engagement. Another hallmark of INFJ leadership is leading by example with integrity. INFJs are guided by strong internal values, and they work hard to align their team with a clear, principled mission. They won't ask others to do something unethical or meaningless. On the contrary, they inspire others by showing why the work matters. This sense of purpose can be highly motivating. Team members see that the INFJ isn't just chasing profits. They genuinely want to benefit clients, community, or the world in some way. Such value-driven leadership creates a culture of trust and commitment as everyone rallies behind a shared vision. Lastly, INFJs use their emotional intelligence to coach and develop others. Whereas some leaders rely on authority or fear, INFJs lean on understanding and encouragement, and they prefer to empower their team rather than micromanage. An INFJ might mentor a junior colleague, drawing out that person's talents and confidence over time. If mistakes occur, the INFJ leader is more likely to patiently discuss what went wrong and how to grow rather than yelling or blaming. This high EQ approach in leadership has tangible benefits. Research highlighted by Forbes shows that empathetic leaders drive greater innovation and retention on their teams. INFJs exemplify this by cultivating a supportive environment where people aren't afraid to voice ideas or admit failures. In sum, INFJ leaders harness emotional intelligence as a kind of quiet superpower. They lead with heart and vision, and in doing so, often unlock their team's highest potential. When empathy overloads, to illustrate these themes, consider the story of Emma, an INFJ who was promoted to project manager at a mid-sized nonprofit. Passionate and idealistic, Emma threw herself into the role. From day one, her team noticed her superpowers. Emma could walk into the Monday staff meeting and instantly sense if someone was upset or if unspoken issues were brewing. On one occasion, she paused the agenda because she felt something was off. It turned out 2 team members had a misunderstanding that Emma gently brought to light and helped resolve. This intuitive empathy made the workplace feel safe. Colleagues started calling Emma their office counselor, and even senior executives admired how smoothly her team ran under her compassionate leadership. Yet as the months passed, Emma began to experience the hidden struggles of her INFJ nature. Ever the people pleaser, she found herself taking on more and more duties. She hated to say no when other departments asked for help on projects. After all, the nonprofit's mission mattered to her deeply. She also became the go-to confidant for staff personal problems. After work, her phone would buzz with texts from coworkers seeking advice or just a listening ear. Emma obliged every time, not realizing she was stretching herself thin. Her days got longer. She'd spend hours supporting others and then late evenings scrambling to finish her own work. Eventually, the weight of carrying everyone else's burdens hit Emma like a ton of bricks. One Friday, after diffusing a tense client issue, which only she had perceived coming, she sat at her desk to finalize the quarterly report and found she couldn't concentrate. She felt emotionally spent to the point of numbness, like a well-run dry. That evening, she broke down crying at home, unsure exactly why. It dawned on her that she was burning out. The empathy she wielded so effectively had eroded her boundaries. Emma had absorbed so much stress and sorrow from those around her that she had neglected her own needs and well-being. Recognizing the danger, Emma took a week off to recharge. During that time, she did something difficult for an INFJ. She reached out to a mentor and confessed she was struggling. The mentor, thankfully familiar with Emma's INFJ tendencies, validated her feelings and coached her on setting healthier boundaries. Emma learned that saying no sometimes or delegating tasks isn't a failure to care. It's a necessity to remain effective. She returned to work with a new resolve to balance her superhero empathy with self-care. Over the next months, Emma practiced politely declining extra requests that weren't her responsibility and encouraged team members to solve certain issues without leaning on her for everything. It wasn't easy. She felt each instance of stepping back like a twinge in her heart. But gradually, Emma noticed her energy returning. Importantly, her team continued to thrive. In fact, they admired her even more, seeing that she trusted them and took care of herself. By the year's end, Emma had found a healthier equilibrium. Her INFJ gifts were still in full force. The team culture was warm, collaborative, and mission-driven, but she no longer ended each day on the verge of collapse. Emma's story shows the critical lesson many INFJs must learn. Even the deepest well of empathy needs limits. With mindful self-management, an INFJ can sustain their superpowers for the long haul without letting the job or others' problems completely consume them. Balancing the blade of empathy. The INFJ at work is a study in contrasts, a leader and teammate who is at once exceptionally strong and achingly vulnerable. Their emotional intelligence gives them secret superpowers that can transform a workplace. Empathy that fosters loyalty, intuition that drives innovation, and integrity that inspires others to do good work. Yet that same emotional core exposes INFJs to unique on-the-job struggles. the risk of emotional burnout, the pain of seeing others' problems too clearly, and the temptation to overextend or lose themselves while helping everyone else. As one source insightfully noted, INFJs possess a high EQ, which is both a blessing and a curse, heightening their awareness of humanity's darkness as much as its light. For INFJs and those who work with them, the key takeaway is balance. INFJs thrive when they learn to set boundaries without guilt, protecting their energy so that their empathy remains a sustainable gift rather than a self-destructive force. Simple practices like carving out solitude to recharge, learning to sometimes say, "I need help" or "not right now," and differentiating one's own feelings from others can go a long way in preventing empathy fatigue. It's also important for INFJs to remember that their insight into others doesn't guarantee infallibility. Even an empath can misread situations or be deceived, so practicing a bit of healthy skepticism and self-care is wise. On the flip side, colleagues and organizations should recognize the immense value INFJs bring and not take advantage of their kindness. Encouraging INFJ personalities to voice their needs and reassuring them that setting limits is respected will ultimately enable them to contribute at an even higher level. When their strengths are appreciated and their struggles accommodated, INFJs can truly soar, leading with remarkable compassion, creativity, and quietly principled courage. In such an environment, the INFJ's emotional intelligence is not dangerous at all. It becomes a superpower that elevates everyone, forging teams that are not only successful in their goals, but deeply human in their approach. In the end, the INFJ's journey in the workplace is about turning that double-edged sword of empathy into a finely balanced tool, one that cuts through cynicism, builds genuine connection, and yes, also knows when to sheath itself for renewal. With that balance, INFJs' secret superpowers become an extraordinary asset, and their hidden struggles become growth edges that make them even stronger. The INFJ who masters this will continue to guide, inspire, and achieve without losing themselves along the way. If this helped you see your strengths and your risks more clearly, subscribe and turn on notifications. Next week, we're diving into the dark side of INFJ leadership and the power plays no one sees coming. I'll see you there.